Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm Phil Denshi with the Land Records team, and welcome to today's meeting. Uh, President of the members of the subcommittee are Kathy Boyce from Calhoun, Jane Schultz from Winifred, Samantha Boothby from Cherokee, Katie Carlton from Union County, Naomi Ellis from Marion County, and Carolyn Seabrook from Lynn County. So those are the official members of this committee. Just as a matter of protocol, we have a lot of guests today, and we want to welcome you. Um, However, only the committee members can vote, and only they really are intended to speak. If you are a guest and you wish to engage in the discussion, um, I'm not going to prohibit anybody from saying anything, but it would be really preferred if you could enter your comments in the chat pod. We will monitor those as we go and try to point those out where it is appropriate. I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to get the packet displayed. So what you should see on your screen is a a, uh, a packet showing the agenda for the meeting. We have some kind of ministerial issues to take care of beginning. I have a lot of reports and updates and general discussion. But other than that, we have one policy item that has the potential for action. It doesn't necessarily mean we definitely are going to do that, but we're going to at least talk about it, see where the conversation goes. So the first thing I want to take care of on the agenda is the meeting summary. This is back in April 17th. I believe we circulated this quite a while ago, so you may need to refresh your minds about it. But this is the written meeting summary from April 17th, and I would ask for any comments or corrections or a motion in the chat pod to either orally or in the chat pod to um, take action on the meeting summary.
I would make a motion to approve the meeting summary from April 17th, 25.
Okay, there is a motion made by Katie Carlton. Is there a second, either orally or in the chat pod? And I see a second in the chat pod from James Schultz. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I would call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve the meeting summary from April 17th, please say aye or
Aye.
enter it in the chat
Aye.
pod.
Aye.
Thank you. I have a couple votes in the chat pod, and I don't hear any objection, but I'll ask for, is there anybody opposed? If not, we would declare the motion approved, and we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an issue relating to the designation of a potential subcommittee chair. I would like to just take a moment to give some background on this. Um, for a long time, really, for as long as we've done this, we have sort of defaulted to me as sort of the facilitator of the meeting, bringing up the discussion and asking for the motions, and that has been fine. But a couple of years ago, we did make a change in the finance subcommittee. And we said, would one of you step up and volunteer to be the chair of the finance subcommittee so that other people can, sort of hear somebody else talk for a change other than just me. And then also sort of give it a little bit more gravitas from the standpoint of being led by a voting member of the committee, which I am not. And coincidentally enough, Stacey Hurridge, the chair of the finance subcommittee, just showed up. And, Stacey, if you had any comments or can attest to how it works, but it's actually worked out very well. Stacey's done a very fine job and has volunteered to be the chair, and she was sort of chosen by unanimous consent. And, we don't necessarily have to be overly formal here. So, um, sometime, after the April meeting, I think I did send a note out to the members of the committee, the subcommittee that is, asking if anybody would like to volunteer for that role. And um, from my point of view, it's not a role that says, okay, the person in this role sets the agenda or, is totally in control of everything. It's just more of a matter of protocol. I think it would be fair to say in terms of the relationship the professional relationship, I mean, that Stacy and I have is that when the agendas get put together, I think she gives more attention to it because she's the chair, and she is more prone to communicate with me and ask questions about what do we mean by this, what do we mean by that, what's the intention, what are we trying to do. So she has an understanding of the context of things as we proceed through the meeting. That's sort of the way it is structured. I do not mean to suggest that a chair doesn't have any influence over the direction. I think that's more of a collaborative, how do we want to go? Here's why we want to do it. It's a discussion, and it's always worked very well doing it that way, especially as we've done it in the finance subcommittee. So I initiated this conversation to say, does anybody want to step forward to volunteer to be in that role? And Kathy and Carolyn stepped forward and said, we would be interested in doing that. And I think the way it was presented to me, and if I'm not getting this right, Kathy and Carolyn, you correct me, but it was more of the, maybe they can't do it every single time, but they would be sort of be willing to be sort of the co-chairs or something like that, uh, um, in case one of them couldn't be at a particular meeting. That's sort of the way that conversation went. So my response has been, great, thank you for volunteering. Probably the right thing to do is to bring this to the full subcommittee, and either by consensus or by a vote, however you wish to proceed, they could take action to kind of make this official. My suggestion would be that if you wanted to, and you don't have to do it this way, this is just a suggestion, and that is that the maybe you designate one person to be the chair and the other one to be vice chair to stand in when the other one can't do it. So um, this is a decision for the subcommittee. Um, and I appreciate very much the volunteerism from Carolyn and Kathy. And I'm ready to move forward with the wishes of the subcommittee. So, Carolyn or Kathy, if you have any comments you want to add, and then I would open it up to discussion among the subcommittee members.
I don't really have anything to add.
I don't really either. We're learning as we go and we're willing to both help out and see what we can do.
Thank you both. Are there any other comments or questions from the members of the subcommittee? I am monitoring the chat pod in case anybody else has a comment. If not, I would, as the maybe my final actor, I would entertain a motion to nom nominate or make some sort of action with regard to the some subcommittee chair from the member of the committee.
I would make a motion for Carolyn to serve as the chair and Kathy as the vice chair.
Haley Carlson has made a motion to designate Carolyn as the chair and Kathy as the vice chair. Are there any other nominees or motions? Could I ask for a second from a member of the committee?
Looks like
Can I,
Yeah.
can I second it?
It looks like Naomi and Sam in the chat pod.
Okay, thank you. I see
Did
that
that.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Designate Carolyn as the chair and Kathy as the vice chair. And is there any further discussion? Very well. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I see ayes in the chat pod. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, I would declare the motion approved. Carolyn and Kathy, congratulations. I know this will take you far in your career, so I appreciate it very much. So with that, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Carolyn and ask you to take us to the next item on the agenda.
Okay, so the first thing up is the annual report for Iowa land records. Everybody should have received this report? I believe it was last week. Is that correct, Phil?
Actually, it just went out this week.
Okay,
So
this week.
and I can add that I think the game plan is that the ISAC staff is going to be sending it to the board of supervisors in every county. I think that is either going out today or tomorrow. I'm not sure which.
This is
But
Kristen speaking. I did check in with ISAC today, excuse me, and they are sending out this report to county supervisors later this afternoon. So
Right.
today, yes.
So I think our thought was from a staff perspective, we wanted to be sure that the recorder saw it first. We did review much of this content with the leadership, and you'll see that there is a letter in here from the ESS committee chair and Ditchworth to sort of introduce the message. And I think I see Kristen has posted a link to the report in the chat pod. Uh, so I hope it represents everybody well, and definitely was designed to promote the fee policy change in particular, and to answer questions that we have heard over the past months about why does the ESS do it this way, and so on and so forth. And so hopefully we answered a lot of questions.
I would just say that as people review this, if anybody has any questions, maybe to send an email. Phil, who's the best person from your staff, and then CC Kathy and I.
I would just say, if you send an email, send it to support@clris.com, and that way you have multiple staff on the team that are receiving it, and then we can more confidently assure timely responses to anything we receive. Of course, feel free to call any of us, Lisa, myself. We'd be happy to visit with you, and I encourage you to communicate with Ann too as a committee chair.
And then on the back page, there is, it looks like, for the most part, the updated association district map.
Yes, it is. I mean, I
So-
think there was one change, or there are a couple of changes that are happening right now that we could not update in time, but generally it is updated, yes.
So. And the one question I had was Dubuque has Keith Lucy in there. Is that who's appointed, or was there somebody else that came across for Dubuque with Carol Kennedy's exit?
Hi, this is Lisa. Keith is the auditor, so he's the elected official acting as the recorder currently. I believe the Board of Supervisors has decided to appoint someone, and they are accepting applications.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Ready for the next item.
So the next item is the agreement for electronic payment processing. And apparently there is an agreement with Lynn County Public Health Department and ESS to partner with them for some work that the Public Health Department wants to do. And Phil, if you want to kind of give an overview on that agreement
You
and
bet.
what it's about.
You bet. I'm soliciting input a little bit here. So first, by way of background, because you may not have thought about this, because we've been doing this for about 2 years now, almost 2 years. Um, but um, I think I saw Teresa Sackett's name in the attendee list. But a couple of years ago at the deputies conference, Teresa and I had a conversation about would it be possible to leverage the ESS payment system to support a new application that Lynn County was working on. And in this case, it was a registration renewal system. And so we said, yeah, we would be happy to talk to you about that. So one thing led to another, and we ended up establishing a formal 28-year agreement, which is what I'm showing you on screen right now. And this outlines the mutual responsibilities of ourselves as ESS and Lynn County in implementing this on-demand payment system. And by on-demand, or OD for short, basically that means that somebody could go to a website, they could place an order, but Lynn County did not want to be responsible for actually exchanging credit card information and so on, but we have the ability to do that through the ESS system. So we use our payment infrastructure to set it up. We work with the Lynn County people to integrate the application so that when a customer places an order online, it takes them to a web page that we actually are in control of to manage the payment system. And then when the transaction is complete, we send the appropriate information through an API back to Lynn County, and then they can fulfill the order. That's the way it works, and we've been doing it for 2 cycles now. Most of the activity is in the fall. We've had a lot of boat activity this year too, but it is working, and we use the same mechanisms that we use for our regular point of sale system. We collect the money, and then we issue an answer file to transmit the money to Lynn County for the services that are due. And actually, it's been working remarkably well. So fast forward in time, Lynn County last year approached us about the possibility of doing something similar with their Easy Air program. And basically, this is a program not in the recorder's office, but where Lynn County has an online application system for people to submit applications for basically air permits, right? Environmental permitting. And and they do not have a method in that system at this time to do online payments. So people can submit their applications online, but the order can't be fulfilled. They have to end up going back to traditional ways. Um, so we're in the midst of a discussion right now, not with Carolyn, but with other members of the IT staff at Lynn County, and then also the environmental department at Lynn County, about how we would make this work. One of the complicating things that have come up in our most recent discussion is that the application itself is not run by Lynn County. They're using a third-party service provider to provide this application. I know this is in small print, but you might be able to see the name of the company is Infotech. So the actual application, you can connect to it through the Lynn County website, but the application itself is being offered by a private vendor. And that is a little bit different in nature because our integration would likely not be with Lynn County. It probably would be with this third-party private company, which is something that we have not done before. And uh, I am a little bit hesitant, I have to admit, to say that it probably means that we might have to do a separate contract or agreement with this third-party company. I'm not saying it can't be done or shouldn't be done, but I do think we need to be very deliberate about getting it done. So, as far as the application itself, or working with the Lynn County Environmental Department, no issues. But we've never worked with this company before, and I'm not sure that they have, as a company, really thought through how this is all going to work. Because I've asked the technical people at this company, does your business side know that you're thinking about doing this? And do they have any opinions about what the business arrangement should be, what the contract might look like, and so on? And I'm kind of still waiting for an answer on that. So, because this is new, and this would take us another step further, doing something that we haven't traditionally done, I just wanted to be sure that we were being transparent about it and communicating with the standard committee and the ESS committee about what this nature of this would be. I want to make myself available to answer any questions that you have. Um, so I see a question in the chat pod from John in Lynn County, and she's asked me if the third party link back to Lynn County site similar to DNR renewal platform. Pardon me. As we've discussed it so far, as far as, for example, the page I'm showing you is really the entry point to somebody, and they would click on another link in here to initiate the application, so to speak. And as I understand it, the application really isn't on the Lynn County website; it's in the company website. For Infotech. So yes, there's a link to the Lynn County website, but no, we're not linking to an application that has been developed and is in the direct control of Lynn County, is my interpretation of it so far. We're still having the conversation with them, and please don't take that as a no, but it is definitely different in the way it's structured. I hope that answered your question, John.
That's fine. I have one question for this too, because I haven't talked to the health department about what this new thing is they're doing. But is there any work being done on your guys' end as far as you're not doing any software development for them or anything that's taking your time up, are you?
Well, it will take us some time. Now, we're not going to have to reinvent the wheel. Okay, we've developed the ODA, the on-demand application, and that is working, but it will take some time on the part of our development team to provide not just Lake County, but Infotech with application access to the payment application. And that will require some development work. And you know, I I don't know what the math is yet in terms of would there be enough transactional activity to um, to uh, uh, provide any kind of return on investment.
Right.
What I know so far is that there are I don't know 1,000 to 1,200 applications processed every year, and the application cost is much higher than the cost of asking for a renewal of a hunting license, much higher, hundreds of dollars. And so we haven't done the math on that. We're just trying to work through the business issues first. So
Okay, so
no decisions have been made yet.
okay, I just wanted to be sure that whatever the cost is, so if it's a higher cost then through the payment fees that you guys will be doing, that you recoup your cost and then like you're not losing money on this because you are using development staff. I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, and we do. I think when we do the analysis, we need to think a little bit in the longer term, right? Because you don't always get all your money back in the first year, but if you look at it over, an ongoing program, then the development work you paid for in year one, you're not really having to do in year two or three. So we'll look at the big picture on that, but I'm in agreement with you, Carolyn, that it shouldn't be a loser for us, right? So we're going to see, not asking for any decision today, but I want you to be aware that the discussion is happening. And that's really all we need to do today. I would welcome any comments or further input from any of the participants in the meeting today, whether you're a member of the committee or not. So thank you for letting me present it to you.
And just to be clear too, is this something, since we're the standards committee, and this isn't something that we would ever be making a vote on, that would be more of the finance committee, I assume?
Well, from a business perspective, we would take it to the full ESS committee because it would likely be a contract issue. Uh, and uh, uh, and I do think it's something that we would discuss with the finance subcommittee as well, just because of the same questions that you asked. What's the finances of it? But I'm also willing to bring it to the standards subcommittee because it's not uncommon for us to come to you because we've used the standards subcommittee as a sounding board for software development. Okay, should we do that software development? What do you think of that idea? This is why we're going to talk to you a little bit today about the notification system and Back to Blue as the next agenda item because we really look at the standards subcommittee as not just a policy making body, but you're kind of our sounding board for some of the software issues that we deal with too.
Okay.
I have a quick question. So with Lynn County, with you doing is it DNR boat side by sides and hunting through the Iowa Land Records?
We do all renewals online. So any snowmobile, ATV, ORV, ORM boats, we do those online with the software program that our IT created. The payment is through the ILR system, just like real estate is. So basically we get two things ACH'd into our account. So basically ILR takes care of all of the payment for that system, but it's a Lynn County link and it's unlike what health department has done, they're using a third party company for all the boat renewals and off-road vehicle renewals. It's all done through Lynn County.
So is that something other counties though could do? Phil?
We left it open that for the software, didn't we feel that they could take advantage of that and then work with you to get that?
So I can answer partly that. If you go back and read through the 28-year agreement itself between Lynn County and ESS, there are provisions in there that Lynn County has volunteered to share their code and their technology with us with the idea that we might be able to put some kind of application together that would serve multiple counties that might not be able to afford developing their own renewal system. We have had recent conversations with the IT staff at Lynn County about beginning to do a code review and begin to talk about what that would look like. We've been pretty thin on development resources right now, so we can't just charge ahead and do it because we have so many other things on the plate. But my current thinking would be that if some legislation were to be approved in a satisfactory form and it did provide some additional revenue to the ESS system, that should be something that we invest in. And I have a marker out there with the IT staff at Lynn County to begin that discussion this fall. So it's not something that we're going to be able to do right away, but it definitely is on the drawing board. And I also want to go back to a question in the chat pod about has the Lynn County project paid for itself now? And I would say in year one, it was definitely a negative. We invested more in the software development and in the time to make it work than we received in compensation. But now we're in year two, that development work is done, the system is working, and we've been through a renewal cycle in the fall, and then we've been through a renewal cycle with boats, and I would say that we're definitely in the black at this point. I don't want to mislead you. This is not a huge revenue stream. It's fairly small, but in terms of ROI or did we recoup our investment? Yes, we have at this point.
Okay, so how much extra do people pay for the renewing stuff that way?
Well, right now we just charge a 3% surcharge
Okay.
on whatever the transaction value is. And that's a fairly small number. If you go to other websites, you're paying $1 or $2 or whatever dollar, add-on fee, for the convenience, and we have not done that at this point. We've had some initial discussions about, is that something that we should consider? But we also don't want to make it such a negative that, people don't use it. So it's a conversation we're having, but right now it's just a flat 3% of the transaction amount.
We had
Okay.
we had a good amount of our votes renewed online this year. Being in the first year, we were very pleased. It was more than 50% of our votes, and we have over 10,000 votes renewals that we sent out. So it was a good amount.
I guess I wanted to go back to what Phil said about only having 2 developers. With the potential for a lot of work on behalf of the Recorders Association, I just would want to make sure that we're prioritizing the recorders or our association over, a project that doesn't directly benefit all of
Yeah.
us, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm concerned about that too. We just don't know how complicated the integration work would be, given that it's a private company. We've been through the cycle with the Lynn County staff. They were great to work with. We've collaborated with them on all the testing. It was definitely a team effort. I'm not sure exactly what this looks like yet, so we'll be cautious about that. I want to go back to a question I think that came from Don. And Don, I think your question was, when a transaction is completed, are the customers returned back to the Lynn County site? And the answer to that is yes. It does work that way. And then I see Stacy's put in some numbers for 2025. $4,217 for on-demand service fee. Um, you know, it is a marginal net income. It's not a huge amount, because we pay merchant fees to our payment gateway companies for every transaction we do. So that is not really net income. It's a fraction of that. But I think we definitely are in the black at this point. Okay, probably enough on that one today. Thank you for indulging me, but something to watch for in the future potentially.
Okay, so the next item is a potential work authorization. It looks like with WWC, and after reading this, it would be in lieu of lean technologies. But Phil, I'll let you discuss.
Again, I do not have a lot to present today. The members of the Standard Subcommittee and the Finance Subcommittee and the ESS Committee should have all seen this before, so there's nothing new that I'm presenting today. But this is the first time you have met since April, and I want to make sure that we're available to answer any questions that you have. But we did take some action at the May meeting of the ESS committee and the Finance Subcommittee to allocate about $70,000 for some supplemental development work. And then as a follow-up to that, we said, okay, now we need to get some cost estimates on using a third-party organization because we don't have the internal bandwidth to do it ourselves. What would it cost to build the basic property notification system that we've talked about, and what would it take to make the changes that are pending before the legislature updates the Back to Blue program to move it from a redaction program to a full-fledged um, um, shielding program, which is a completely different animal and much more involved and complicated as well. And I should say would require more staff effort to administer that program. But we went back out to the current contractors that we have used previously that we still have under a master agreement. So we wouldn't need to go do an RFP or anything. We should just leverage the two companies that we've already worked with, and then issue a work authorization to them. And what we found in the results is that, we're talking somewhere between $100,000 and $300,000, to do the work associated with this, which obviously is beyond what our current means are. So the short update is we're on hold on this until we see what our revenue is as we go deeper into calendar year 2025, and then also potentially looking at whatever the results of the legislation might be. Um, and uh, Again, we have done the analysis on it. And then as a part of this, I'm sorry I scrolled too quickly, um, but uh, uh, what is included in your packet, and again, this is not a new thing here, but what is the description of what the notification system would look like? Um, and I use the term scaffolding here, okay? And by that, I mean sort of in software development, there are certain things you have to build in the basic functionality of a website. So in the notification system, there are certain things that you have to build. You have to build the ability to have your system run a search based on any names that are entered. You have to have the ability to build a database of whatever names are put into the notification system. You have to build a method of returning communication to the right people to say, hey, did something happen or did it not happen? Uh, you have to build those basic components of the notification system in order to do that. So when we describe, and this is basically the same information we provided to the technical service providers. So we said, here are the basics of what we want to build for both the notification system, and then we did the same thing by providing them with a description of what the basic elements of the Back to Blue shielding program would be, and that's what we asked them to base their cost estimates on. I think it's just in the backs of our mind, we need to realize that this isn't everything that has to be done. There are refinements, and we know that people are going to say, "Well, I wish it would do this. I wish it would do that." And when you add those things on, certainly there's going to be more investment required. But we wanted to be transparent with everybody about what is it that we're actually talking about building. Because you may have different ideas about what you envision these things to be, but and then what can you reasonably expect the cost to be? And from my point of view, in my experience in working with both of these companies and the software developers, generally speaking, probably something in the $250,000 range is the most realistic estimate for these basic tasks to build these two things. With outside developers who obviously are more costly, but right now I don't have a lot of developers in-house that I can just assign this to. So this is likely the route that we would need to go in order to get something done timely. So I'm bringing this to you not as an action item. I'm informing you, being transparent, telling you what we did, what the results of it are, to share with you the basics of what the scope of work would be to do these two things. And then I'm here to answer any questions that you have. I would anticipate that, the next opportunity to even think about actually moving forward with this will be at the August meeting, because that'll be our next opportunity to examine the budget, to see if we have enough resources to move forward or get some further direction. So I'll be quiet. I would welcome your input and answer any questions that you have.
So I just have a couple things. Someone had asked about whether instead of like for the property notification, instead of like getting notified by an email, if you could also have a option as a text message for notification, because a lot of like our elderly population don't even have emails, which brings up whether they'd really have to create an account with Iowa Land Records or if they could just go to a link to sign up for the property fraud alert. Because again, a lot of my customers don't have email addresses, my elderly people.
There are two aspects to that I would point out. The first is that um, there is an advantage to users. I understand the issue that not everybody has an email, but there are advantages to users if they go through the search application, because the existence of the search itself is a notification system. They can look stuff up themselves. They don't have to wait to be notified. And that's also a method for them to monitor their activity that might have occurred in the past, because the notification system is only going to be looking at if something new happened. So there are advantages technically and financially to leveraging the Iowa Land Records search application to do this. But I understand that doesn't necessarily mean that has to be the only way. It does mean that we would have to build a separate interface for those who do not have access to email. The other thing that I would say is that we just have to recognize that for an SMS or text-based system, there are additional costs for that. We probably would not be in the position to build our own SMS notification type process. We would probably have to subscribe to a service that provides that functionality, and there is going to be a cost with that. I would, and we would actually like to use SMS text as a means to return the code in our two-factor authentication system. We think that would be a definite improvement and enhancement on what we're doing in our security, but the SMS system is just beyond our budget at the present time. So there are trade-offs, and that's just something that we'll have to look at as we go forward. But right now, the text message notification is not built into the scope of work. It would be an add-on.
Okay, and then I had one other question from another recorder, like, would it be cheaper to hire another developer to help develop this stuff opposed to paying one of these companies?
It probably would be cheaper from that perspective, in terms of is the hourly cost going to be lower if we hire a full-time staff person? And I think the answer to that is yes. But my caution is that we have a very large backlog of things we need to do internally that are not trivial. And if I were to hire a developer to fill the vacancy that we have today, they're probably going to be working on those things and not on the on these specific applications. And I just have to be honest and say, we just do not have the money in the budget to do that right now. So it is a difficult choice that has to be made. But in my opinion, if you want a if we have to do a new Back to Blue program, and if you want a notification system, we will get there quicker, even though it may be more expensive if we use outside developers to do that. That's just my evaluation of where we are at. If we were to get legislation passed and we were receiving an additional $2 per document, um, um, assuming that everybody stayed within the 28-year agreement, I definitely think that we would consider hiring internal developers to do that. But that's just not where we are today. So I agree with you. That would be cheaper. Is that what we can do today? No, I don't think we can.
The other question, another question that was asked was, and I'm gonna just expand on that to more than one vendor, because I know at least 3 vendors already have PFA. Have you reached out to the vendors who already have it and see if they would be willing to work with you statewide, if that would be cheaper?
No, I have not, and I've been hesitant to do that. And the reason is, You know, historically speaking, we have wanted to maintain good relationships with all of the local land record management system vendors. Um, and we have been hesitant to engage in direct agreements with them to do supplemental work because then we're kind of viewed maybe by the other vendors as kind of playing favorites or giving some measure of favoritism, and we don't want to do that. The other thing that comes into my mind is that if we were to work with any individual vendor from the local land record management system, particularly in doing a notification system, um, we're handing data over to them from other counties that
But they would
are
already
not their
have
clients.
data because it's public, right?
They might or they might not have that. Um, you know, if they have it already, then they're getting it through a separate arrangement, or they're paying people to search out land records and download it. But I'm not aware of anything that's set up where uh, a particular vendor is getting access to all data from all 99 counties. They may have persuaded an individual county to, you know, subscribe to their service, but those counties are choosing to provide their data in order for them to make that work. And I may have just have been around too long, but you know, in the structure of setting up our land records, the idea of sharing data with one vendor, um, this is something that I kind of maybe had ingrained in me that that's something that we should not try to do. So, uh, could you do that? Uh, yeah, probably you should. But there are going to be trade-offs there that maybe you don't want to experience. So we'll see how that goes.
And another
I know
question,
this, Carolyn. You have one, at least today, you have one statewide system. And if you really want a statewide system, then the best place to do that is Iowa Land Records. That's my belief.
another question I have is, how many people currently already have PFA? How many count, I guess the question would really be is, how many counties have PFA currently and how many don't? Like, how many is there that still need it?
You mean the notification system? Is that what
Right, like, I know, like, cot users, fiddler users, I guess Tyler users can have PFA as well, and I don't know about Solutions or anybody else. But of the 99 counties, how many already aren't using PFA?
I do not know the answer to that. Uh, the only answer I know is a couple of years ago, the Recorders Association took a vote and they said they wanted to have a statewide system and they wanted Iowa Land Records to do that. If that has changed and um, most counties have their own arrangements made and you don't want to do that anymore, uh, just tell me because we have plenty to do.
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I guess with that question being asked and just what you said, it probably would make sense, because some of what we have heard is that other counties aren't going to be taking advantage of it because they have their own, or most owners only own property in a couple counties and wouldn't be using it. They would just go to those two counties. And so I guess one of the things before we spend a lot of money, if you ask me, would be just to make sure that it is a useful tool for us to be spending this money on, once, given the fact that when this came out, you said that you wanted to do this yourself in-house, and now you don't have staff to do it. If we're going to pay more to other subscribers, it would be best if we take a look and see how many people are in need of this. Because if it's only a handful, we may want to put it on the back burner a few years. I don't know what the best answer is, I guess. those between the few questions that we got and thinking about it that way, it'd be probably worth it to know how many counties don't currently have the system, because I do believe it's a good thing and I do believe it's necessary. I'm not personally saying that, but I think it would be something to look at.
I would, it's something I know that Ann, and, others, from the governing board are listening in today. I think if there's a desire to maybe do a survey of the counties, to kind of revisit what the association, said they wanted to do a couple of years ago, I think it would be perfectly appropriate for maybe the association, or we could help with it, to do an updated survey to see if they wanted to do that. The other mitigating, I don't know if mitigating is the right word, but we do know that there's at least one legislator out there that said, hey, we want a statewide system. So, I think we probably have to have a conversation with one or more of those policymakers to say, hey, maybe this isn't the best route to go. But, and I'm not saying we should do whatever one legislator says, but it's something that is in the background. So, uh, good discussion. We can take that into account. I am here to disclose to you and be transparent about what would it take for our land records to develop a notification system and also a back to blue system if it's approved by the legislature. And this is the information we've gathered so far. So more discussion ahead. Other comments or questions? Okay. I think we're ready maybe then for the next agenda item. And that, go ahead, Carolyn.
Okay, so next up on the agenda would be the updated policy and procedures.
And this is just an informational item. I'm sharing it on screen, but you can see that the most recent update to this, on the cover page, we publish the dates when it was most recently updated. That was done on May 15th at the ESS meeting, where the modifications were made to Chapter 7 were made. And I'm just scrolling ahead right now to Chapter 7. Let me see if I can identify that. I highlighted it so it would be easier to see, but so the change that was made related to the terms of service, and that we made modifications to be more clear with our users about the fact that they don't own their usernames, and if they allow their accounts to lapse and want to come back in, they may or may not get the same username, because we do not preserve that forever. It's not something that somebody says, hey, that's my username, nobody else can use it. We made that change. It went through your subcommittee, and then we took it to the full ESS committee, uh, and um, um, and they approved that policy change. And now we have published a full new PMP document for everybody to look at. So just updating you that you all should have received the most recent publication published on May 15th of this year. And we'll see what happens if other policies get adopted. We kind of lead right into the next agenda item. Um, and if you'll allow me, I'm just going to introduce this real quick and say that the Recorders Association, as an entity, have set up a separate working group, and that is representative of the recorders across the 6 districts. And they're reviewing both the current 28-year agreement and the policies and procedures. So I wanted you to be aware of that. And I can't see the whole participant list today. Let me see if I can pull that up.
I think Jamie if she's on, was willing to chat about it.
Yeah, I'm here, Phil.
Okay, go ahead.
So I mean, you just kind of gave it in a nutshell, which is what I was gonna do. So the exec board just wanted to recognize that the recorders wanted really a voice in that 28E and the policies and procedures. So this working group is an opportunity for them to kind of express some ideas and give some input towards that. I have made the group aware that, you know, we can't really enforce any changes. That's up to the coordinating committee to do that, but we'll certainly suggest or give them a list of proposed changes for that. If they want to take those changes or not, that's up to that coordinating committee. So we do have our next meeting is July 24th. We've mostly made our way through the 28E, so we'll review some of the ideas that we've had for change for that, and then start in on the policies and procedures. And if anyone has questions, I mean, you can feel free to give me a call in Adams County or shoot me an email. Be glad to answer any questions.
And to add to that, Jamie had mentioned if anyone has any input that they want to give to their representatives before the next meeting, go ahead and do that. Would be great.
Thank you for the update.
I do have a question if I missed it. Who did you name the representatives? Do people know who to contact in
Yeah,
their
so
districts?
sure. So there was an email sent out to the association, Phil. It's the president of each district, and then the board appointed one other person. And I can certainly send that back out to the association as well. But there's two from each district.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat pod about is the policies and procedures posted? Yes, if you go to the accountability section of the ALO website, it is posted there. I think we've fairly broadly disseminated it. And if you're saying it's well, one, then thank you for letting us know. We will check that. It should be the one that's dated 5/15. So thank you for pointing that out. Okay, I'm ready for the next agenda item if you are.
Okay, so the next item is well, we just talked about the ICRO working group. County project assessment cost sharing program.
Okay, so okay, this is what I'm looking at. So the cost sharing program is outlined in Chapter 9 of the Policies and Procedures. And if you look to the back of that, it was originally established back in 2014, and there haven't been any changes to it since that time. And the history of it was that originally, when we were working with the local service providers, we did ask the counties to pay for that maintenance expense because it was related to their service provider and the services that they were providing to maintain the integration with Iowa Land Records. Then back in 2014, and I have to admit, I don't remember the entire context of it, but the idea was twofold: to create a means to take some of that burden off of the individual counties and have the project pay for a portion of that maintenance expense. And then the other part was to maybe do it in such a way that it would provide an incentive for recorders to promote the use of e-submission, which to a certain extent, I think we would have to say has been largely successful from the standpoint of getting people comfortable with electronic reporting. We're certainly much farther along today than we were in 2014, 10 years later. So this is the policy. This is the structure of the sharing program, and uh, we really haven't changed it. The main implementation change that has been made over the years is that up until a few years ago, there was a point where the committee, the ESS committee, reached a stage where they said, well, let's implement the formula, but then let's make sure that everybody, no matter what, gets the same amount that they had the previous year in the cost sharing credit. And so that was implemented. Then, in addition to that, once you run the formula, you know, it doesn't always come out even. So if we budgeted $100,000 for the program and then we ran the formula, it did not always generate exactly that amount in expenditure. And that was just because there's variances in whether certain counties are above or below the statewide average. So at that point in time, the committee said, well, let's make sure we're using all of that money. So once the formula was run, they might say, okay, now we're going to add $50 or $90 to the amount of every county's credit so that we have spent all the money that we budgeted, or at least most of it. And so that has been done for a number of years. So last couple of years, because of tight budgets, we've actually had to reduce the amount of that money that was budgeted for the program, but we still kind of proceeded ahead with trying to make sure that all the money we budgeted got spent. And that's where we are today. Fast forward to last summer, when the initial plans were being made to propose a fee change policy. The uh, the uh, the the planning committee, that is the fee policy planning committee, and this is during the period of, I think, August of last year. It was decided that if the policy that was being advanced for the recording fee change was approved, and this primarily related to the $3 per document allocation to Iowa land records, that if that was approved, then Iowa land records and the ESS would commit to pay 100% of that maintenance fee expense. And so that is still a part of the game plan. In terms of the direction that I have from the ESS committee, that's still the assumption that we're making. We were asked questions at the most recent ESS finance meeting about, is that still true? And I think my answer was yes, it is, except if we were to see a large exodus, pardon me, if we were to see a large exodus from the 28E agreement, it might not be possible for us to make that commitment financially. So that's just a caveat that we have discussed. But the current direction I have is that we're going to assume for now that the legislation will be approved. We're going to assume that most counties will stay within the 28-year agreement. And if those conditions are present, then we're planning to budget so that ESS would take over 100% of that maintenance expense. I was asked a question at the Finance Subcommittee, well, if it doesn't get approved, what happens then? I'm paraphrasing here. And my answer was, well, then we'll have to revisit that. I can't guarantee that we would be in a position to pay that 100% amount. So Then, kind of in conjunction with that, I'm going back to the packet now. In conjunction with that, um, we did receive a request to answer uh, uh, and to a memo that was distributed that analyzed the cost sharing amounts, and they analyzed it by dividing the cost sharing amount by the number of documents that were recorded in a particular county. And I was asked the question, is this spreadsheet generally accurate? And if you look at the next to the last column here, where it speaks to the county cost per document, is what that is intended to say, that it is absolutely correct mathematically to say that counties that have a lot of recording, their their cost per county for the maintenance fee is substantially less, because you're taking kind of a standard average number and dividing it by a larger number of documents, whereas a small county um, with fewer documents, that divisor is smaller and it's going to end up being a higher number. And that mathematically is correct. I'm not disputing. I might have put the spreadsheet together a little bit differently, but it's basically telling a correct story, that if you look at it on a per document basis, uh, small counties pay more per document for maintenance than large counties do. I think you can generally make that statement. And Carolyn asked me to share my analysis with her, and I'm providing that to you. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I think historically, I would say that um, large counties have made a substantial contribution to the overall system by definition. I mean, that is where most of the e-recording activity is. That is where most of the revenue for the current $1 per document fee comes from. Certainly at the very beginning, when the first year the per document fee was $5 per document, the large counties contributed the majority of the resources. So the philosophy of if you go back to 2014, the philosophy of the ESS committee was that every county should pay something. They should have some skin in the game, and in fact, a couple of times over the course of the last 10 years, this question of fairness of how much is every county paying for the maintenance amount, is that the right way to go? And after it was discussed, it was never anything that was brought to a vote, but it has been analyzed in this way before. And the decisions were made to say we're not going to advance that idea. I would just say to the standard subcommittee, and I would say the same thing to the ESS coordinating committee, that if you want to change this formula, you can do whatever you want. What we do today is the product of discussion about, uh, what each county should reasonably contribute to the project. But I also will say kind of the path that we're on right now is not going to be a moot issue if the legislation were to be approved. So if it is the desire of the standard subcommittee and the SS committee to change the formula, tell me how to do the numbers and I'll do it. And
I
so
was
this is not,
asked, so the background of this, so everybody knows, is that I was asked by another county recorder, what would happen possibly if some counties backed out of using ILR. And while no county has said that they would, it just kind of got me thinking. So Donna and I crunched some numbers and did some things. And since this isn't something we do on a typical basis, I wanted Phil's input before I responded to the recorder who had asked the question.
You bet.
Yeah, I feel like we just need to probably wait to see what legislation decides and then even, I mean, if we get the fee increase and everything, I mean, maybe you could change the formula a little, so the county still pay a little bit, but not as much as what they've been paying now, so that Iowa Land Records still had money to work on these other projects. But I feel like we just got to wait for legislation and see what happens.
Understood. And this is not here as an action item today. We just wanted to introduce the conversation to you and make sure that that you had the same information and that we're being transparent about it. And I just want to be very clear that yes, I have a history. I can tell you the history of why things were done a certain way. But if the committees decide that they want to do this differently, um, I'm happy to accommodate. All right. The the next topic. If you, I'm ready for the next topic, Roland.
So the next item is actually, it looks like you're wanting an approval on the data and information standards update. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry. Should you repeat that?
Looks like, are you wanting the approval on the data and information standards update?
Yes, I'm ready to talk about that.
Okay.
But I need to give you some background first. So, I'm going to start, if you'll allow me, and I'm not going to hash through this again. But back at the April meeting, we presented a couple of memos to you about, about how we are going and what direction are we heading. And I presented this information to you to basically say and acknowledge things are changing. Okay, that um, you know, uh, I kind of maybe being stuck in my ways or whatever, but had always operated under the impression that the ESS committee and the members of the association as a large body were in favor of adopting standards and standards not just for the operation of ESS, but in the name of consistency, standards that would be applicable to individual counties and how things are interpreted. And there was always given some, I guess, attention to the idea that that customers wanted things to be consistent, whether they were in County A or County B. That's sort of been our mentality, and that view is changing. Um, I don't think we can make that firm assumption that that's the way everybody wants to do anything. And I think the conversations that have occurred over the last 7 or 8 months attest to that. And we just have to acknowledge and accept that that conversation is changing. And so the purpose of giving you these two memos was to encourage you as the standards subcommittee, and I did the same thing with the ESS coordinating committee to, to give some thought to honestly, looking inward and say, should we be doing things differently? I think, even though I wasn't part of the planning process, I kind of interpret the work of this working group to look at the the policies and procedures and the 2080 agreement as part of that same conversation. And I think it is good and healthy that everybody do that. So fast forward in time, we are at a point where another manifestation of that discussion is a changing view of how we implement certain standards in order to have a statewide system. And up until this year, I would say the main thing that we had in place wasn't necessarily the policies and procedures, but really was the scope of work and the technical specifications that we have established for the operation of the Iowa Land Record System. Because there is no statewide system unless you have an integration with the 99 counties. And so over the course of time, we have seen that the contract with the local service providers have evolved. And the evolution has been every year they get a little bit more specific. Every year we try to, to be less general and more specific about, what every service provider and what the mutual responsibilities of ESS are. And as you look at this part of your packet, it starts with Exhibit A and Exhibit B. This is exactly what we have published and are using with the service providers. And I can say that the service providers as a group have generally accepted this methodology. And so we said, okay, we're going to pay every service provider an equal amount per county. So every county is treated the same. And then we're going to apply the same set of technical standards to every service provider. And every service provider, except one, has adopted the updated agreement this year. So I'm not being critical. I'm not making any judgment. I'm just saying that in most cases, everybody's still with this program. There is an exception to that. And so one service provider has said, I do not want to be a part of the maintenance agreement anymore. I'm not going to sign the contract. I don't want you to pay me. But in general terms, they have said, but I'm still going to do what I have to do to support my counties so that they can participate in the ESS and Iowa Land Record System. Okay, you can accept that at face value, but how are we to, as a system, that is the 28U organization known as ESS, how do we now hold anybody accountable? Because that service provider isn't looking at a contract anymore. All we have is policies and procedures, right? And this scope of work and technical specifications currently are not part of the policies and procedures. So we ask ourselves, what should our next steps be, and who should be responsible for holding those service providers that choose not to participate in the current system? How do we hold them accountable for meeting the obligations to keep everything working as it should? Again, I'm not making any judgments here. That's a choice that some people can make, and they did. And so now we have to decide, what do we do next? So I can tell you what we're doing right now. One is that we're still holding quarterly calls with the service providers to talk about support issues and sort of what the next steps are, particularly with respect to integrations with the e-submission API and our new county upload API. That's the main focus of our discussion with them. And we are, I can say that I know that every service provider, regardless of contract status, has seen the current scope of work and specifications. This should not be a surprise to anybody. We're saying this is what we expect everybody to do. And so we know that that communication is there, but we aren't sure what happens next. We're looking at July 17th. It's 17 days after the beginning of the fiscal year. And the contract with one of the service providers expired on June 30th. Okay, so that's no longer in place. And so what are the right things that we should do? We've been thinking about this. We talked to you about this at the previous meeting, so this is not a new topic. Most of the information in the chapter 2 that is before you was presented to you in April. So this is generally speaking not new, but I have made a few tweaks to it. A couple of changes that I made is that we now have House File 1031 in front of us. I can look at that and say, okay, what can we learn from that? One of them is that we have some new language defining what a county land record management system is, and we have new language that describes what the electronic services system is, and we have a generally accepted definition of what an application programming interface is. So those are terms that, if we just borrow what's in the bill, generally speaking, we have some agreement on that. This is what we're talking about. Then another thing that's different is in terms of our authority and purpose, we can talk about our relationship with the service provider. So instead of saying that ESS is required to implement, now we're saying we're going to facilitate. We're facilitating electronic recording. And we're saying that in anticipation of what some potential changes might occur within the pending legislation. So then we say, okay, how do we be more specific, and in what form should that take to communicate to everyone what our expectations are, both from a business perspective and a technical perspective? So what's in front of you in this new section 2.3, which, by the way, what's in front of you basically wipes out the current chapter 2, and we're starting over more or less. So section 2.3, subsection 1, if you go through the document that I showed you just a moment ago, that is the scope of work and the technical specifications, items A through O basically mirror what is in that document. So what we're saying is that we're going to publish a scope and specifications document that covers the following topics. And that's what is in the current procedures. Okay. Then, as we look to a new subsection 2.3, subsection 2, what are we saying? Well, now we're describing something about expectations for members of the 28-year agreement. So if House File 1031 were to be approved today, we would probably need to reword a bunch of stuff throughout the policies and procedures and say that some of it only relates to counties who are in the 28-year agreement. So that first paragraph really speaks to, if a county is a member of the 28-year agreement, then their service providers, are required to fulfill the scope of work and technical specifications. It's just as there's an expectation that if you're in the 28-year agreement, you're going to do that. Hopefully everybody would agree with that, but that's really who the policies and procedure will be for in the future. Not everybody, just the 28E members, right? So then we asked ourselves, okay, what is going to be true for those counties who are not in the 28-year agreement? And what is going to be true for those service providers who do not engage in a maintenance agreement? Okay, those are two conditions that we have to account for. And in the second paragraph, in this draft, we're saying compliance with ESS and the scope and specifications is required for participation in the e-submission service, the county upload service, and the search service, or any other ESS application. In other words, what we're saying is any county that isn't in the 28-year agreement, or any county that has a service provider that chooses not to participate in the maintenance agreement, they still have to follow the scope and specifications if they want to participate in the e-submission service and the search application. That is, we're essentially saying, hey, we have some business rules on how Iowa Land Records participates or operates. And if you want to participate in the system, then you have to meet the same standards that everybody else does. It's just another way of saying it. It is something that we'll have to reconcile with the legislation in some measure, because the legislation, even though it's not perfectly written, it does say that every county shall participate in the flow of these submission documents, and every county shall upload their records to the selected search vendor, whatever that language says. So they have to participate. But on the other hand, what happens if they want to participate, but they don't want to follow all the rules? What happens in that circumstance? And I think it's a question we have to grapple with, because if every service provider in every county is not willing to do all of the business and technical requirements, are they really participating? This is a question I think we just have to grapple with. I'm not saying that the language in front of you is perfect, but it's an effort to try and answer that question. Then the third paragraph of this section relates to the service provider not being a party to the maintenance agreement. If ESS doesn't have a contract with a local land record management system anymore, then we've got no mechanism to be the ones to hold them accountable, except for maybe they can't participate if they're not following all the rules. But it's not us. It's not ESS saying, we're going to hold you accountable. Really, I think the shift in the burden of assuring compliance moves from ESS to their county, because they're essentially saying, well, we're going to still do everything we need to legally support that county. The ESS isn't in a position to enforce that. And so we're saying, how can we place that responsibility on the individual county to say, it's not our job anymore, it's your job as a county to ensure compliance with those specifications and policies. I'm going to be quiet here in a minute. The very last section is an effort to just say that we're going to keep communicating no matter what, that things are going to change, technical standards will change, and we as the electronic services system should be responsible for continuing to communicate with everybody, with the counties, the recorders, the local service providers, to make sure everybody's up to speed on what changes are being done. And so, just like we're going to do this afternoon, whether they participate or not, we're still going to invite any county service provider that does not participate in the maintenance agreement, we're still going to invite them to participate in the meetings and the communication, because we're not making any judgments here. They all should be welcome to participate and receive the knowledge and communication that we have. And we're committed to doing that today, even before a bill has passed. We're committed to doing that. And so this paragraph is intended to put in writing, we're committed to keep those channels of communication open. So I'm not asking you or insisting that you take action today, but these are questions that I think you should discuss, because right now we don't have an agreement with one service provider, and we don't know how many counties are going to withdraw from the 28-year agreement. So let's be prepared for that. What are we going to do? How are we going to behave? And this is just an effort to try to answer those questions. So I want to pause, stop talking, and just listen for a while. I'm going to try and catch up and read any comments in the chat pod.
I just feel maybe this part of the policy, we should give it to that policy work group for them to kind of see what they're saying, because this is kind of part of the policy before we make it decide to approve anything.
I can share with you, Kathy, that this has been provided to Jamie, and I have encouraged her to make sure that this potentially rewritten version of Chapter 2 is a part of their review.
Yep, and that's what I'd like to wait to see their comments and review on it before we give an approval on it, because that's what that group is kind of for. So I don't want to step on their toes, and because they're looking at everything in depth, I'd like their opinion.
I just was looking, just kind of reading through it a little bit more. Am I off mute? I guess. Who then, with all of this, would be like, if they don't fulfill like their technical specifications and whatnot, will stuff even be able to make it into their system correctly? And then, who is at fault for that? And then also with that third paragraph that you were talking about, I kind of agree with it. It gives the county control, which is what everybody wants, while still, having accountability and following the same set of standards. So like everyone else said, I think it requires a lot more set of eyes to look at it and evaluate it. But isn't that what people have been wanting, is a little bit of county control while still following the same system? Sorry, that was a lot of moving parts, but the one I do wonder who would be at fault if they aren't updating, and following the same specifications that are required, and then doesn't make it into the system.
I don't know the answer to any of those questions yet. So
I think that, so I have two questions, I guess. One is, shouldn't every county already have in their contract with their vendor that they shall upload all data into ILR system? I guess I would think that would be part of our own contract with the vendor already, that it still shall be done. And I'm going to use the word shall because it shall. And I guess as far as some of the taking a step back a little bit, the API updates and other things, we're going to be paying for two vendors who can't do it, or helping them out, so to speak, because they don't have it. So I guess my question is, you said that everybody's received that. How long ago have they received it? Like 2 days ago? Have you gotten input from everybody? And has all the vendors been able to say, yes, we have the staff to do this, or no, we don't, we're going to need help? Or is it going to be the deadline date comes and then they're going to say, oh, we don't have this done, and we're going to have to scramble and help out?
Well, I can tell you very clearly that every vendor received the technical specification. We've been talking to them about the submission and the county upload API for multiple years now. When we felt that it was necessary to defer the implementation because obviously people weren't ready, we've opted to provide flexibility and say, okay, we're going to defer the deadline on this. And that's been happening for at least 3 years now. And we're continuing to communicate. So, for example, this afternoon, and this is another agenda item that we'll talk about, but this afternoon we're going to get into some more specifics about data elements that they should be sure to be sending to us from the county system, how they should be mapped to the correct data elements in the ILR system. And I'm very confident that, we've fulfilled our duty to give advance notice to the service providers. And, most of the time when we meet with the service providers, they don't necessarily want to talk out loud in front of the other service providers. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. But, if they've had questions, I guarantee you, we absolutely have given them ample opportunity to it. And where most of that conversation happens in the context of when a service provider really starts working on the integration, that's when those questions come up. And we see that across the board. That's not unique to any service provider. And I would include the service provider that doesn't have a contract with us right now. From a technical point of view, that communication does happen, and it's happened successfully. So do not interpret what I'm saying as a criticism. It's just that things are different. How should we do it going forward so that it works? With regard to the 2 service providers that serve only one county each, we can see that they're struggling, okay? And the economics do not work out for them very well, as it does for other service providers. So I think we have a responsibility to be proactive and say, come on, guys, you need some help. What can we do to help you? And that's what we're doing with those circumstances. So I don't have any doubt about the technical capability of those companies to do what they need to do, but it's a bandwidth issue, and I wouldn't do it every day, but these are special circumstances, and if we get everybody caught up to the new APIs, it's going to serve everybody well for multiple years. So I feel good about what we're doing in that case. So I'm not I'm not suggesting that anybody's not capable. It's just the reality on the ground that we're trying to deal with.
Okay, thank you for explaining that a little bit more.
My,
Can I answer one of your questions though? Yeah, maybe it should be something that's in your current contract. I have no way of verifying that. The only thing I've had with the service providers is the contracts that we've had. I don't know what your contracts say. So I'm suggesting that maybe that would be something that be examined if it hasn't been already.
I would say when I signed with Fiddler, I mean, they wrote the contract, so I don't think probably anything was in there. I didn't have anything added about complying with Iowa land records. Didn't even think about that. I mean, they were the company and wrote the contract, and I had our county attorney look it over, and we signed it. So
I was just looking at mine and it does talk about, agreeing to, it talks about third-party software. Is that what this would be? Like for COT, for example, Iowa Land Records would be a third-party software? Or no? Because it does have that in the contract that they agree to coordinate with third parties.
Okay, so maybe, and this is why I bring it up, is because I think that we're getting into a period where we should be looking at our contracts. And so Katie, thank you for checking that. And Kathy, you looked at yours and it doesn't have that language.
I don't know. I have not looked at it. I mean, it's been a year and a half ago that we signed the contract. I don't recall whether it had any of that language. I'm just saying they wrote the contract and we signed it. I didn't have any input of adding anything to it, so I'm not sure.
I don't know the answer to it either. And again, that's why we're bringing it up today, so we can start to have that conversation. The only thing we have had control over is the contracts that we have, and obviously we'll address that. So we're in uncharted territory and saying, okay, if we don't have a contract, then who is responsible for holding them accountable, and how should that be manifested? And one way to manifest that is to put it in your agreements with them, or to have some other written agreement with them, or something else that you're satisfied with. At some point when we're in implementation, then we will be able to communicate with you or any recorder to say, I just want you to know things are not working here. Here's what we see. And then we can talk about, okay, what do we do about that?
Well, and my thing would be for like Fiddler, because they don't want to sign the maintenance agreement. If we have this contract or whatever, I would want, before we approve any contract, their opinion, because I don't understand all the computer lingo and I don't know what some of the terms are and how stuff works. So I would want kind of their opinion to know whether like all those things are really things they can do and are feasible, I guess, because I don't understand computer programming and lingo.
Right. Well, I would say something that you could do is that we have published our business requirements and our technical specifications freely, and they have been provided to every service provider. And it would be a reasonable question for you as a customer to say, okay, here's what's been published for the integration with ILR. Do you have any problem with any of this? And that may lead to further conversation. So my interpretation of the discussion, Carolyn, is that there's a desire for further discussion and nobody's feeling a compelling need to act on this today. And I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. But I appreciate everybody. There's some questions in the chat pod that maybe I can help answer offline. And I appreciate everybody being willing to take this up as a discussion.
Yeah. Do we need to we should probably make a motion, since it was an action item, to table this?
I'll make a motion to table it until we see what the policy work group has to say about it.
Okay, and I can second it.
So
You have to do the vote, Carolyn.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Thanks, Phil. If everybody would like to, so Kathy made the motion to table this essentially, and I second it, and all members saying aye.
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 And
I have yes votes or aye votes from Naomi and Jane in the chat pod.
And any nays? Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys. Okay, so do we want to move on to the next discussion item, the POS voids and refunds section.
Yes, and I want to defer to Lisa and or Samantha on our staff. This is just an information item. What I have on screen is what our current policies and procedures say about this issue, and we're specifically talking about items Z and E.
Thanks, Phil. It's Lisa. I'm going to go ahead. Samantha may jump in. I think this is mostly informational and a reminder that refunds should never be issued on the point of sale terminals, because if you issue a refund, it comes out of our account. It doesn't come out of your account because the terminal doesn't have access to your account. All the money going in or out of the account would be from the ILR account. And I can't think of a way we don't have the authority to take it out of an account. So reminder, always avoid before the end of the business day, which is about 5:30. The machines are set to batch at 5:45. So you might have a couple minutes of leniency there. If you get it done by 5:40, 5:30, 5:45, you'll be good. We'll still distribute the funds to you the next day. If a refund is issued, the funds do go back to the customer. The funds do come out of our account. We notice that, and then we contact you and ask you to send us a check. We'll send you an invoice so you've got a paper trail. But if you're ever issuing a refund for any reason, you would need to do that through check or cash or what other means you may have in the office. There is a policy here, if you look at F, that allows us to charge you $25 when that happens. We've had internal discussion whether this should be changed, because historically we have not charged that fee. So that's something, the committee and ESS can take up and make a decision. I think it would be hard for you at the county to determine where those funds are going to come from. We know everyone's budget is tight. I would encourage everyone to include this in training. It feels like we've had a lot of new people within the counties recently. So training, a gentle reminder, those kind of things to everyone, maybe a little sign that says no refunds on the side where the customer can't see it. And then finally, we are working on some updated signage to get out to you so that you can have something to display to your customers of which payment forms are accepted. And it does include the normal credit cards as well as some of the wallets, such as Apple Pay, that you may have on your phone. And I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Well, thanks, Lisa. That was a good update, and we'll look forward to the signage, and we will hopefully all remind staff that, including new staff, no refunds, voids only. Thank you. Okay, looks like we'll move on to the ILR applications, e-submission and search. Alternative e-submission application programming interface. Looks like it's next on the agenda.
All right. And I have great news that I think we can get through these informational items relatively efficiently. So we'll see if we can get that done. This item is something I just want everybody to be aware of. I don't think it necessarily received a lot of attention in the end of section, discussions. But it is a part of House File 1031. And I would say that, this is one of the items that, we didn't get everything, but we did ask for some changes in the House before the bill was passed. And this is one of the things that was included. And I also have to acknowledge that this is something that we did initiate. And the reason is that in the earlier versions of House File 1031, when it talked about the e-submission service, there were just some lack of clarity about exactly what we were going to do, because there was requests for alternatives. I think the term choices was used, or options was used, about what options can be provided to counties in e-submission. And I know that kind of everybody thought that that main idea was just with regard to, allowing a county to open up this system to other e-submission service providers. And there still is an element of that in the bill, but this is another element, and that is that if the way the bill is written, if a county were to withdraw from the 28-year agreement, how would they continue to participate in the Iowa Land Records Submission Service? And I think this commitments were stated that, okay, we're going to make sure that every county is still going to participate in the Iowa submission service. What does that mean? Well, one way to view that is that you keep doing what you're doing today, and that is you receive communication to say, hey, there's an e-submission waiting for you. You log into the ILR e-submission service, and then you review the document in the ILR e-submission service. You approve it, decline it, and then if it's approved, then your county downloads it, and you finish your indexing process locally. Basically, that would continue. That is one way to do it. But another way it could happen is that we could make a modification to our API that says the API will provide the information to the county, and if the county service provider, the local land record management system, wanted to, they should connect to the API, and they could provide the interface for reviewing a document. So you wouldn't necessarily have to log into the ILR submission service. If they were using this alternative path, you could stay within your county system. You would be through software your vendor would provide. You would be presented with the image and the index information that was provided, and then you could review it and approve it in that system instead of the ILR submission service. Depending on what you did, approved or disapproved, the API would provide that your county would communicate back to Iowa Land Records and tell us what happened. If it was recorded, we would want the recording information. And if it was not recorded, we would want to receive the decline information that matched our API. So the idea behind this was that we should make an adjustment in our system so that as a county, if you and your service provider wanted to develop an alternative interface, but still be integrated with the ILR submission service, we could do that. And so that concept was advanced, and we said, yes, we could do that. I don't know if we can get it done by July 1. It will take some time to develop, but it's something that could be done. And I just wanted you to be aware that this is an element of the bill, and that we believe that we would be able to do this. So it's not a concern, it's not an issue for us. It's just a different way of doing business. And for that county that was not a part of the 28-year agreement, it does provide an alternative. I'll go one step further and say that potentially this alternative method could also be made available to other counties that are still a part of the 28-year agreement. So it's something that would create an option for counties beyond the current system as you know it today. And I just wanted to make sure that you, as a subcommittee, were aware of that. And it's something that, assuming the bill passes, I would not really expect this provision to be changed. And it's something that we would be obligated to work on once it was signed into law. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. If not, we can move on.
Looks like you have data element requirements next, and that would be the extra thing you sent to us yesterday afternoon, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the last item I sent you. And here is the reason why we're working on this. We want to be in a position to clearly communicate to the service providers about what our data expectations are. And one approach you could take is you could say, well, we just expect the service provider to provide or to follow the requirements of the API. And it turns out that that is necessary but not sufficient to do everything that I think you want us to do and what you want your service provider to do. That is, we want to have a robust set of data about every document so that it is searchable and you can find the information that you need. So if you look strictly at the way the API is organized, and you have to kind of view this from the point of view that developers communicate with each other in a certain way. And if you look only at our API, it would divide data elements into two classes. There would either be a required data element that if it was not present, the message would fail, or it would be an optional element. And that basically means that, hey, it's open, we want the data, but it's presented as an O, an option. And if that's all you communicate, then there's a chance that some data that you want is not going to be transferred in the API. That's true today. So can we be better at that? And so what we have done with this draft is we're saying that there are a lot of data elements that are optional that some of them we may not really be very interested in, or we're reasonably sure that counties are not indexing it anyway. Because you have to put this in the context of when this whole thing was put together, we looked at MISMO and we looked at PRIA and said, okay, we're going to follow their schema. But that doesn't mean that every data element in their schemas was valuable or worth trying to gather data about. So in this communication, what we're trying to say to your local service providers, we're going to use the letter E, and that is it may be optional, but it's also expected. That is, we're wanting to communicate with them that this particular data element, if it is present in the county system, we want it to be transmitted to ILR. And I think this is going to be a better way to communicate with the service provider going forward. I don't interpret this to that I'm saying that your counties or service providers have not been doing a good job or have somehow not been providing all the data that we want. I think they've done a pretty darn good job overall, but I'm not sure everybody does it exactly the right way or is as complete as it could be. And so we're going to try to do a better job of communicating that. So every data element, except a few that you see on these 3 pages, are common and readily transmitted to ILR. So this is just a little bit more specific format than you may be used to seeing. But this is the data that flows between your county systems and ILR. And I thought you would be interested in seeing it in this format. But there are a lot of things that if you look strictly at our API, they're classified as optional. And we want to be more clear than ever before about what our expectation is. So if you review the data elements list, you see something missing or you don't know what it is, please be sure to let me know and I'll try to answer that question. There are some data elements that we are not currently gathering that we might gather in the future. And I'm going to highlight 2 of them here. The first is the category of notary information. Now, when we did the survey a year or so ago about did our user base really have a high interest in notary information being indexed and then viewable in our land records, the general answer was that our user base, those who responded to the survey, said that they didn't think that was very important. And so in our schema right now, notary information is a part of the schema. It always has been, but we've not activated it. Fast forward to this year, we became aware that a service provider was planning to activate notary information as an indexable item with the idea that it might help with fraud prevention. Okay, we acknowledged that and said, all right, well, what are we going to do with that as ESS and our land records? Should we, if they start doing that, if they start indexing it, should we capture it? Should we modify our system so that that information should be displayed? And my answer to that right now is if a group of counties start indexing notary information, I think it should be a part of the ILR system. It may not be meaningful statewide, but it would be meaningful in those counties. And so the data elements that would be affected are the notary commission number, the notary expiration date, the state in which the commission was granted, because we do get notarization from other jurisdictions, the name of the notary, and then if you see how some documents are, you might have one party have it notarized by one notary, and then a second party have a different notary notarize it. So there's a sequence number because there could be more than one notary represented in a document. And this is how we would do it. So this would be part of our technical specification, and we would share this with the service providers. This part of the schema is not active yet, but we would propose to activate it if any counties start indexing notary information. So I want you to be aware of that, and then you can tell me if you like it or not. But it is possible to do, and this is how we would do it.
Did you say that there are counties currently doing it or they're just looking at doing it?
I think the county's service provider is saying they intend to activate it, but I don't know what the recorders are going to do with it yet.
Fiddler said, I think when we get our next update, they will have that option to index the notary in it. And I myself, I don't know if we'll index it right away, but maybe soon. We're putting parcel ID numbers in as much as possible. So I don't feel like it'd hurt to have the notary, at least the name and like the state or something where it was notarized, or where they're from.
Yeah, then I would
So-
agree that we should, if there's people that are gonna start indexing notary information, then we definitely should be looking at doing that as a whole, which I don't even know if we have that capability now. So maybe that's something that we can I'll reach out to and ask about for the next meeting.
So I will say I reached out to Fiddler and we can get that set up if we have interest in doing so right away. Lincoln County, we just haven't had time to add that to everything that we have going on right now. I am going to send back what is all included in indexing notaries, and actually with those data elements, I might say, because I'm guessing it's probably likely the name and the expiration date for sure. I don't know about the state sequence number. I'll see what they have set up, and there's, because other states are already doing that, and we can join that. Yeah. Also, Fiddler's actually, I was learned that they're also coming out with a notary fraud alert, where the notaries would be able to sign up just like a homeowner could for anything that they notarize. They could, and we index it, then they could be notified if they register. Now that's something new and they're in the test phases of that, but I just wanted to let everybody know that if we start capturing things, that's also coming down the line for them as well. So I don't know. I want to talk with Fiddler probably over the next 2-3 months and see what it's like, or get some samples. And that's something that Lynn County may start doing January 1st.
Phil, do you know what the PRIA standards are for notaries, or what do they do for indexing notaries?
This is from the PRIA standard.
Okay,
Yes.
I
That
just
is-
saw
okay.
notary there and I didn't see PRIA like on the other one, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
The column that says schema, everything is really related to PRIA, the original standard, but there are sub schemas that you see listed here as well, but they're all part of the large PRIA schema. Okay, everything you see is.
So even where it just says notary, those are PRIA standards for notary. Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying?
correct. Yes. And then moving on, I do also want to just mention as an aside that, there are other parts of the PRIA standard that we do have in our schema. They're just not activated. And I'm illustrating an example of that, and that is consideration amounts are also incorporated. So, if we decided to, there are 3 types of consideration amount types that would be common and are included in the PRIA standard: the mortgage consideration amount, the sale price consideration amount, and a lien amount, say from the Department of Revenue. So all of those are incorporated. These are the data elements that we would likely use. And this is how the mapping would be done. Again, I want to make sure you understand these are not active right now, but if a county was indexing consideration information, we do have the ability to turn that on, and we could display it within the LR system. There are others as well. These 2 are probably the most useful. A third area that we're also talking about would be registration systems like MERS. And the reason we're thinking about that is that you're going to see emerge a number of registration systems that relate to blockchain and tokenization. And as that practice emerges, there are likely to be reference numbers assigned to those artifacts, those tokens. And they would probably appear on documents that are recorded. And therefore, because the data is on the document, it could be indexed. So I want you to be aware that right now, the PRIA standard only includes one registration system, and that's for MERS, okay? And it's not active and not used, but it should be. That could easily be converted to a registration number that could be applicable to a blockchain, to a tokenization system, to MERS, to another one that's active right now called DIRT. Whether that should be done or not is not for me to decide, but I want you to be aware that the data elements and the basic structure for that does exist within the ILR and the PRIA system. So just something to think about. I have one last item that we can talk about today, and it will take about 5 minutes. May I proceed, Carolyn?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, I was just waiting and listening. Yes, go
I know.
ahead.
It's hard to break that old habit, isn't it? I know. So in your packet, and this is just for information, is the reprinted version of House File 1031 as it passed the House. Okay. And I'm not making any comment one way or the other about it. But as your project manager, I want you to be aware that that we're in a position to make suggestions. That I had this in, oh, here it is. If you look at pages 99 and 100, I have been through the bill kind of with a comb, so to speak, and identified things that could be improved or clarified. These are in somewhat order of importance, I'll acknowledge, but I want to make sure one thing is understood, that nothing substantive is really changing with any of these amendments. It basically, these are things that we could take a look at and say, the wording on that could be clearer, or, we might be able to improve upon that so that it's easier to implement any of those types of categories. We're not intending to make a major change in the major elements of the bill. So, for example, there's nothing in here about increasing the allocation to our land records from counties who opt out of the 28E agreement. Currently, the bill says $1, and we aren't $1, and we aren't proposing to change that. So changes like that have been purposely excluded from this list. But this list does represent what I would consider to be mostly technical changes that could improve the bill. And I'm not trying to give you bill language today. I'm just giving you, take a look at these sections of the bill for yourself. Could that be worded better? Could we do it differently? Could it fix an issue that wouldn't be hard to fix and really might even be considered non-controversial in most cases? The first two items probably are the most substantive. Um, um, and that is because there are provisions in the bill relating to the requirement for counties to upload records to the statewide land records search system and to facilitate the quote flow of documents for e-submission. A little bit vague in my opinion, and maybe could be strengthened and just made more clear. Both of those provisions could be re-examined to see if they could be worded better or differently. So I understand that the Recorders Association has said we support the bill without amendment. I understand that. But at the same time, as your administrator who works for a system that's supposed to actually implement things, I think there are a number of areas of improvement that are potentially there that maybe should be looked at before all is said and done. So I just wanted to highlight that for you, um, and um, um, you know, ask you to give a look at it, um, judge for yourselves, and you know, if there is interest, you know, we're prepared to put some flesh on the bone, you know, as we get closer to the next session. So that's it. I would just say I appreciate all the conversation and the questions today, and I don't have anything further for you.
Does anybody have any immediate responses to the clarification of the amendments? Or have people had time to take a look at those sections, or do we just want to discuss this at the next meeting?
I would say, you know, you've got the bill in front of you. Go through these different sections and look for yourselves, and then we'll see where it stands once we get to the next meeting. So take a look for yourselves and don't wait. But we probably will talk about it again at the October meeting.
Okay, and just so everybody's reminded, at summer school, it was approved that we move forward with 1031. Discussion was any major any changes, modifications, it would have to go back through the House, and there is concern that it may not move forward. Now, minor rewordings, I believe that is different, so we would have to take all those things into consideration. And I'm sure that we'll have much more discussion on that at the next meeting. Is that accurate, Phil? Is that what you're intending?
Yeah, and I would even say kind of the intent would be not just to talk about it in the Senate, but you know, to take some improvement ideas back to the sponsors in the House, and you know, see if some mutual agreement could be reached. Maybe not on all, but on some of them maybe. So, but we're not, I want to be clear again, we're not trying to change the major parts.
Okay, did anybody else have any input discussion about that at this time? All right, seeing none. So there is some discussion about our next scheduled meeting in October. Myself and Kathy are both not going to be in the office on October 16th, which is the tentatively scheduled next meeting. We were wondering if everybody could take a look at their calendar, and we can, you don't have to answer now, but if potentially October 23rd would work for everybody. I've talked to Phil, and Phil said that he and his staff are good with that. And Kathy and I, that works for us. If everybody else could take a look at that, and then just get back to me, that would be great. That's on the committee.
So just to repeat, October 23rd is the proposed alternative date.
All right, so Katie says that works for her. Naomi says that works. All right, thanks guys. So, we'll probably send out then, Phil, I think, somebody sends that out from your staff about the meetings, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. So we'll get that out to everybody. Anything else anybody would like to discuss before we end the meeting?
I'll just say again, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for sticking in here. So I think that then we can move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Kathy.
Second.
Kathy.
All right, perfect. Thanks, guys. And thanks, Phil. We will see you guys in October.